running these literally multi-million-dollar campaigns, and meanwhile at home you're dealing with all this.
He dragged me by my hair, and it went on. He beat me for hours, held my mouth open, poured vodka down my throat. I didn't know if I was going to survive. I tried to leave. I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm leaving. And as I went to leave, he got to the door before I did. And he locked the door. And this is why when they say, why don't victims leave? I tried to leave the first time and look what happened. He could have killed me many times, Lorna. The strikes to my head and the blows to my face, inch or two, that could have been the end of my life. Yeah. I had to have spinal surgery years later to correct the damages. It takes the average victim 7 reports, official reports.
I mean,
and he's out on the streets now again.
And it could totally happen again. I know you're working with Governor Kathy Hochul right now. What exactly are you hoping to push through and change?
Welcome to M-powerTV, where we leave a legacy of hope through conversations that uplift, educate, and inspire. Listen to incredible stories of people who overcame challenges and barriers, celebrate victories, learn from setbacks, and push forward together.
And you would hear all this torture, and then they would shoot.
Want to be empowered? Let's go. Subscribe for more and get this book now.
Hello and welcome to M-powerTV. My name is Lorna Grayling and I will be your host today. Joining us all the way from New York, she flew in last night, Vanessa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You are a powerhouse woman. I know you worked with multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns in New York. I mean, you had this extraordinary life. Tell us a little bit about that, Vanessa, and what you did.
Sure. I actually left college after my second year at Rutgers, and I moved to New York City, and I wanted to work. Yeah. I worked first at a really hot restaurant and nightclub as a director of operations, and that evolved into a job in marketing at the History Channel after a few jobs at marketing agencies. I worked with probably the most talented marketing team to date, I would say. They rebranded the History Channel. I got to be a part of that. We had programming that came out that was record-breaking. I had a wonderful life. I was living the Sex and the Life, but in real life.
You were living the dream.
I was living the dream, and New York City was at its prime back then. So just loving life. Yeah. I started my own pet care business in Hoboken, New Jersey, and then I decided to go back to school. I was like, you know what, let me get that bachelor's degree, and that was more for me than needing it. And I'm kind of somebody, I like instant gratification. I want to get done. So I had taken some courses over the years. I needed a few to graduate. And so I went to a small local college and I had to take one more elective. And so I took God in the Medieval Mind. Oh. And my professor turned out to be my future husband.
Oh, wow.
Yes. My future husband and my future abuser, my son's father. Yes. But he was brilliant in the classroom. I mean, absolutely brilliant. ABD for his doctorate in philosophy and religious studies. His parents, hardworking third-generation farmers in Orange County, New York. So it just seemed like a wholesome, and I was attracted to his mind. Eidetic memory, so to be able to quote Plato and Aristotle right off the cusp was, I want to...
It's like in a movie, right?
It was like in a movie.
It's like literally the things that you see in a movie.
And you're teaching, you know, he was adjunct at this particular school and a university and the local community college, you know, in where I live now. So you don't imagine, it's just not on your radar that this person is sadistic, that I know now. That just was so far. And he caught me at a time my parents were divorcing. So it was a trying time. I'm an only child.
So you leaned on him a lot, right? For that support.
Yeah. And looking back now, it really is like they say, he slowly and methodically picked apart my life and isolated me. I didn't realize what was happening until I looked around one day and was like, I don't have anything left. My condo was gone. I wouldn't say my friends were gone. It wasn't as though they abandoned me, but some did have to, they saw what was happening and they didn't understand because they knew me to be so strong, no nonsense. In fact, you know, in my 20s, when girlfriends would be in abusive relationships, they would come and stay with me. So how I was now wrapped up in this and blinded you know, my very best friend from childhood, for her own sake, had to take a step away, and I understand that now, and she and I've spoken, and we're good. But my friends were gone. My family was gone. My money was gone. My career was gone. Everything was just gone.
So when did it start changing for you? Like, and what happened? Because, you know, abuse is such a... And it's wonderful that we're talking about this because it's so masked, like abuse. Everybody's talking about abuse. Like someone will just speak to them in a bad way and they'll say, oh, don't abuse me. I'm being I'm being abused. But go into what exactly happened and when did it start changing for you?
So, you know, and thank you for saying that. I think, you know, I also have a son who's on the spectrum, and this is the first time I'm speaking publicly about it, and I've asked his permission. He's 9. I've never really, because it's his story.
Yeah.
The domestic violence, so it's partly his, because he was alive for it. It's my story. People like to throw around the word I'm neurodivergent, I'm on the spectrum, I'm abused, and I feel they become catchphrases.
Exactly.
And it takes away from victims of domestic violence or sexual abuse that really are victims. And it takes away from children and young adults who really are neurodivergent and do need certain accommodations.
Yes.
Because it makes the non-neurodivergent population feel like they're being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Abuse takes many forms. So, you know, I think it's ironic, and kismet is something I really believe in, and it's something that's gotten me through some of like my darkest days. Like it's gonna turn around when I don't see a turnaround. Or why did this happen? I always find I see the reason later. It's just in that moment it's hard.
Yeah.
And it's kismet because we have the Sean Combs trial, and Cassie just testified last week for days. And abuse is coercive. It's manipulative. It is covert. So it's, you know, you hear, and I hate using catchphrases, but you hear love bombing. And so nobody is without flaws. We all make mistakes. We all want forgiveness. So when somebody that you love makes a mistake, you know, they scream at you and they call you names. You're in an argument and they escalate it. And that hurts. And then they come and they apologize and they not give excuses, but reasons. I have this trauma from my life, because we all have trauma that we carry with us and we bring into relationships if we don't do the work. So you forgive them. It's not going to happen again. And then it happens again. Or maybe before it happens again, you snap at them a little bit. So when they escalate it the next time, they go, well, remember when you wouldn't talk to me, you know, for 10 minutes. You know, getting angry is a normal emotion. So having arguments is normal. So when a couple argues, when parents argue with their children, that's not abuse. When you are consciously dehumanizing somebody and you are consciously calling their names and you are consciously picking at what you know their insecurities are because you have that intimate relationship, that is abuse. When it is pervasive and it is continuous, it's why a lot of victims of domestic violence have CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, because it is the same kind of incident, but over and over, as opposed to one just massive incident. And that starts to chip away at your self-esteem. You really are gaslit. You do start to wonder, is it me? Did I do something wrong? For me, I couldn't understand. I could not wrap my mind around that somebody could be as sick and sadistic as he was seeming. Like, it just wasn't possible. There had to be a solution. Medication, therapy. In his case, when I found out that he had drug and alcohol problems, AA, NA, there's got to be a fix here.
Yeah, because you're such a dynamic person. I mean, you're so dynamic in your job. You are working with these high-profile people, cases, you know, not cases in terms of legal cases, but you're in marketing, and I know your dad is so proud of the marketing that you did. He's like, it was all over New York, it was on the billboards. It was like
He was very proud.
Yeah, you were running these literally multi-million-dollar campaigns, and you were running them, and meanwhile at home you're dealing with all this.
All of this.
But if we talk about all of this, like, what exactly is it? Like, you know, I know you mentioned escalating a voice. Is it just screaming? When does that start turning into something physical? Like, what did you live through? What was it like for you, a day in the life?
The day in the life. The first time it turned physical, he would have these mood swings. And so one minute everything would be fine. I'd take a shower, I'd come out, and nothing had happened. Things weren't fine. And I could start to tell. And because the screaming and the berating had escalated, and I was now living on edge. Outwardly, you couldn't tell. Outwardly, I was controlled, I was measured, everything was good. I tried to leave. I was like, I'm not gonna do this, I'm leaving. And as I went to leave, he got to the door before I did. And he locked the door. And my stomach sank, because you just know this is not what, he dragged me by my hair, and it went on. He beat me for hours, held my mouth open, poured vodka down my throat, wouldn't let me go to the bathroom, threatened to burn me. I didn't know if I was gonna survive. And I was living with him now at this point, on his parents' farm. They lived next door, they knew what was going on. They had me convinced I was the first and only. Deep down, I think I knew. So when I say isolated, there was nobody for miles other than his parents. We had one car. So if I couldn't even get to the car, even if I got out the door, if I couldn't beat him to the car, where was I gonna go? And we lived on a road where there was a lot of trucking, because a lot of farmland. Very easy to get hit by a truck going 60, 70 miles an hour on this road. So I don't know really where, and a few times I did get out the door. One time I did get to the car, he also got in the car. The abuse became, I had to have spinal surgery years later to correct the damages. And I think that was a lot from pulling my hair and just dragging me. When I found out I was getting ready to leave, and this is why when they say, why don't victims leave? I tried to leave the first time and look what happened. That happens again and again. It is why it is so hard to leave. You are afraid for your life. What if they catch you leaving? He could have killed me many times, Lorna. The strikes to my head and the blows to my face, inch or two, that could have been the end of my life. So it really could have been.
Totally.
And this is fact, not conjecture. It takes the average victim 7 reports, official reports, to leave.
How long does it take to file an official report?
When I left, Jack was 11 months. And I left when he wasn't home. And I left with Jack and a diaper bag. And that was it. Because I knew I had to get out. That morning, we were going to work a farmer's market for his parents. He woke up, tripped over the dog, and started beating our dog. He had never done that before. I jumped up to defend the dog. The beating ensued on me, went on for about 10 minutes. And like always, then he would just stop. It's like he exhausted himself. He had given enough to me, and he would just go from here to here. And I looked at him and I said, John, what are you gonna do when Jack is 2? And he comes in the bedroom, Mommy, Daddy, I want breakfast. And he throws his body on us. And he took pause. He did think about what I had asked. And his response was, Jack would never do that. That was my aha moment. I was like, I have to leave, and I have to leave today with Jack, or my son this is gonna happen to him. And so I did. And I had police reports. At that time, I had what they call a refrain from order of protection. So don't hit a person, don't abuse, don't scream at them, don't harass them, all the things you're not supposed to do, but you can still be in their space. So I was like, I have all these police reports. I have pictures of my battered face. I've had orders of protection. This is gonna be a slam dunk. I will go to the court, I will get a full stay away order of protection, I will file for custody, I'll get it. I left, the calls kept coming in. I couldn't take it. So I went to the police station and I was like, look, I have this refrain from. He called me 215 times last night with all these messages, all of these threatening texts. They got me the full order of protection. They charged him with a 2nd-degree harassment, which is a misdemeanor. Great, I had the order of protection, so that at least made it quiet, but it was the calm before the storm.
Where did you stay at that point?
With my mom.
Okay.
First I went to my friend Jackie's house, and because I didn't know, I needed to think before I answered to my mother, and I had to put her through enough with I'm gonna leave, I'm not, and now I had Jack. So I just stayed with my friend for 2 weeks, and she was wonderful. She gave me the space to just think and deal and kind of process. When I got to my mom's, I think it all hit me. I almost became catatonic. It's like, imagine being on a roller coaster. Or
so
spinning
all that
around.
Stress for so long,
It just
so
comes
many
out.
years.
Now you're back in normal life. It's like coming out of war and readjusting to normal life. You don't know what to do with the quiet. And then the memories. And looking back, like, how did I allow this? You're not willingly allow it. I didn't want somebody to beat me. I didn't want to have my soul ripped apart. And at that point, when it all came down, I was on the precipice of breaking or somehow putting myself back together. A friend of mine recommended I go to the Center for Safety and Change. Actually, they had recommended I go to my sister's place in Westchester County. I lived in Rockland. They referred me to the Center for Safety and Change. And it's an organization that helps victims of all crimes, but especially of domestic violence, sexual violence, and human trafficking.
Yeah.
And when I got there, I sat with an advocate, and she was wonderful. But I had to recount everything and chronologically to file for a permanent order of protection for Jack and I.
That's tough in itself, because now you gotta, in your mental state and traumatized state, you have to now literally chronologically go through all these events. I mean, how do you even do that?
That day I didn't.
Is it even possible?
Lorna, I sat there and my mind, this is where I say,
like your brain wouldn't work at that stage.
You're probably the first person who has been able to articulate it.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Nobody's been able to articulate it, but that's exactly it.
Yeah.
My brain felt broken, and the words weren't coming out, but my brain also still worked a little bit. I could tell I wasn't making sense, and I couldn't. My brain and my mouth were not working together, and I was frustrated, and then I couldn't stop crying, sobbing. We got through it, hours we sat. She brought me to probation, which is where you go to file for an order, and she filed everything, and they confirmed everything with me. So they were wonderful in Rockland County. Rockland County also has something that many courts, even in New York, still don't have, and a lot in the country don't have, and it's called IDV Court, Integrated Domestic Violence. You have one judge for the criminal portion against your ex and the family part. One judge hearing both, a specially trained judge. So they have training in dealing with trauma, dealing with victims, dealing with children, dealing with trauma of children, and then dealing with the criminal aspect of all of it. Is it a perfect system? No. But it is much better than having two judges and untrained justices looking over this. I also went to the center. I started getting therapy. I did the work, Lorna. That's why I'm here with you today.
Yeah.
You have to do the work, and the work is hard.
Yeah.
That's why they call it work, right?
Yeah.
The work is hard. I went to therapy once a week, one-on-one, and group therapy once a week for 3 hours. And you'll hear alcoholics in the program say, AA is like their medicine. Group therapy was like my medicine.
Yes.
By Wednesday evenings, I needed to go to that group therapy session, and I needed to talk it out. And in the beginning, I just cried.
Yeah.
When I walked into the DA's office, she is now the senior AD of special victims. She said she thought to herself, "My God, what am I going to do? I'm not going to be able to put her on the stand."
Yeah.
3 months later, after doing the work, and I did the work for 2 years.
Oh wow.
It was a turn. She tells other victims now. I showed up with a binder tabbed with the history in it chronologically, color coordinated. I delivered it to her. She was like, "You did my job."
Wow.
I had some assigned counsel, because here's what people also don't realize: if you're not with somebody like a Sean Combs that has money that maybe you've saved some of it, it's expensive to get your freedom back. Lawyers are not inexpensive,
and there's no help out there.
I had 18B counsel, and there's some great 18B counsel. The attorney I work with now, Trish Gunning, she does some 18B work, and she's amazing, but she's built that way. The counsel I had was not great, so I was pretty much pro se. I realized that early on. What I also realized was I was going to know my story better than any attorney, and I had to go into that courtroom each and every time and be measured, be stoic, no emotion. And just even when he was lying about me, even when his parents went to CPS and lied about me and then went for custody, the judge, I think, saw early on what it was. CPS knew immediately.
How does it feel to sit in a courtroom watching them lie?
It is.
And there's nothing really you can do. Now you got to sit there and be emotionless or control your emotions. Like, how do you even...
It was terrifying at first because I did the research.
Yeah.
The way I was able, I think, part of putting myself back together was to learn everything I could about the family court system, about the cases in Rockland County, what the outcomes that come, read what I could because some are sealed, learn. And I realized very early on, this was going to be, I was in it for the long haul. I thought it was slam dunk. I was quickly disabused of that. I looked at it like a war.
Yeah.
And I realized each court appearance was a battle. I didn't need to win all the battles.
Okay.
I needed to win the battles that were critical for my son's safety, and I needed to ultimately win the war. So this had to be very strategic.
That's good advice right there, right?
It's critical
because
advice.
when you're in a victim situation where you've been physically attacked, like literally fearing for your life, trying to get your child out to safety, and you would think you've had so many, it's already been reported to the police, it should be slam dunk. Like, why is it not?
They prioritize a parent's rights, and listen, there are male victims of domestic violence also, so I don't like to make it a gender thing, but the reality is, by and far the numbers prove, it's women. Parental rights supersede the human rights of children. I have been saying this for years, and I have a fundamental spiritual, legal issue with that, because children are still human beings. Where are their rights to being protected? Why does a parent's right, because they birthed them or they contributed to their birth, supersede their safety? I know a woman, her name is Jacqueline Franchetti. Her daughter was just about the same age as Jack, and our stories are very similar. She was in Long Island. John never had unsupervised visits with Jack. He had 2 years of supervised. It's unheard of. Jacqueline pleaded with the court in Long Island to protect her daughter. The first unsupervised visit, he shot the 3-year-old in the back of their daughter, and then burned the house down. And she has been, talk about a powerhouse, she has been advocating, she has passed reform on the federal level, but she has been trying on the state level. We still see children handed over all the time. Jack, we've been the exception. So when I met with Governor Hochul, the one thing I keep saying is, it can be done. This can be fixed. Justice is never going to be perfect. There'll never be perfect laws. There will always be unintended consequences. This is whatever a naysayer of common sense law, that's what they'll always say, but the unintended consequences. There's always going to be that. You have to write laws that will protect the greater good and deal with the unintended consequences after, and try to tighten up the law.
I know you're working with Governor Kathy Hochul right now on, some of the legislation issue. What exactly are you hoping to, or are you both hoping to push through and change through this?
Well, the governor got through something, and she just announced it, and she's tough. She's tough, and she's very soft-spoken. But she's tough, and she's very bright. And she said she was going to hold up the budget if she could not get discovery reform passed. So back in 2019, 2020, New York State went through a big justice reform transformation, if you will. And she said it perfectly. The pendulum swung from one end all the way to the other. So you weren't getting justice on either side. Part of the issue with discovery reform, where it was when it was amended, was cases were being thrown out for victims over technicalities. The prosecutor forgot to turn over a very basic piece of discovery that had no relevance really on the crime or on whether or not this person had committed the crime, whether or not the victim was telling the truth. And you now have to call the victim and tell them your order of protection's gone. Your case is thrown out. Your children
because of something insignificant.
Or the victim finds a picture. This was an example a DA gave of her battered face or video and gives it over to the prosecution mid-trial. Well, that had to be turned over with discovery. You have X amount of days to do that. If you don't, you're in violation. They can file a motion to dismiss. Cases were getting thrown out over this.
Oh my gosh.
Imagine the devastation. I would have been out of my mind,
devastated, because you're in fear for your life.
Terrified.
Right?
So that was the beginning.
To go through that process already is huge. I mean, a lot of people aren't even willing to take that step and get out because, it's not easy.
You just said it. You just nailed it again. So, when we think about why didn't she leave, you just said it. So if you get out the door. That's great.
Now what now?
Now what now? And now you might possibly have to hand your child over to this person. And if you don't, you get arrested. If you don't, you lose custody to this person. You don't have a lot of options. So when you do leave, and when you have children and you do this, you are leaving and you're putting them at risk. You almost feel like at least if you're with them,
you can somehow protect them with your life, right?
Even when I first went public, we were at the end of the court case. And News 12 wanted to do something similar to this with me. And I was like, well, this is going to do one of two things. It was either going to set him off, but I felt like I could always protect Jack. I was in his line of fire. Or it's going to put him on notice that you didn't really know me. And in court, while I was going to therapy, I was fixing myself. And the more they came at me, the harder it wanted to make me work, Lorna. Because at my core, that's how I am. Tell me I
You're a
can't,
fighter.
I'll do it twice and surpass anything you would have imagined I could do. Strategic I am. John would say at times, and it would be odd times, he was like, God, you can bend a person to your will. And it sounds odd that like the person who abused me would say that, but that was also part of the dynamic where you feel confused. Because we would have these normal conversations.
So nice and then flip. Did he ever go for help?
He did.
Since then?
But the courts mandated it. Okay. Since when we were together, the courts would mandate it when the police did get involved. And he would do it. You know, he would have moments that I would say were moments of enlightenment where he would look at me and say to me that he was just sick and that it's like he knew. But they were fleeting moments. But I have to say they were moments of, I think they were moments of enlightenment. I heard a story, or I can't think of the word that you would call for it right now, but here's a good example. There was a toad, and the toad was going to cross the river, and a scorpion asked for a ride, and the toad said, no, because you're going to sting me. And the scorpion says, well, why would I sting you? We're both going to drown. The toad says, that makes sense. Okay, come on, get on, I'll give you the ride. So they're going across the river, and they're halfway across, and the scorpion stings the toad, and the toad says, why? And he just says, it's just innately in me.
It's just in my nature.
It's in his nature.
Wow.
With John, it was just in his nature. But again, it's very hard to wrap your mind around that. So, but my son, I was fighting for his life. And my mother had said to me at one point when I couldn't get it together, you have to fight, Vanessa. I know you have it in you. Nobody can do this for you. You have to protect them. So, and when they came at me with CPS, and that was on the eve of Thanksgiving, my first Thanksgiving with my family again, and they served me papers, I got angry. And my mom said to me, get angry. Yeah. I got angry. Dig deep into that anger. Lean on the people around. Let it fuel you. And it did. And I kept going into court. And I would go home and scream in a pillow afterwards. Stay angry. Stay focused. Do the work. Because I would not have been able to hold that anger in. Be strategic. Think about it strategically if I hadn't been working on myself to put myself back together. And I think coming out of it, I wound up with full physical and legal custody. John has no visitation, no contact. He did violate my order in 2021 after beating the woman he was with, who I'm friends with now. I supported her through her journey to reporting. He blinded her in her left eye. He was charged with harassment in the second, a misdemeanor. Had it not been for violating my order of protection by sending me just benign emails, he would have gotten off on probation.
So he's doing it again to another woman, and he's still out on the street.
I met the woman before me, and the woman before her contacted me.
Where does it end? Like, where is that point where that person who's now been proven is not stable? How is he still out in the world, going into relationships, putting other people at risk? When is he going to kill someone?
That's always been my thing. And so speaking to the women before me, and knowing the woman after me very well now, it's escalated through the years. It's become more physically violent. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I did have to have spinal surgery, but I was able to move, and I ran them, I run a marathon right before the first physical abuse, so I was in prime shape. I'm still okay. She's blinded and disfigured. And because he used his hand to backhand her, they couldn't prove intent. So it was going to be a misdemeanor. When he pled for the criminal charges in my case in 2016, the ADA set it up so that if he reoffended again within 5 years, there is no domestic violence law in the books in New York State. It's something the governor has been talking about. So I look forward to seeing the governor be victorious again in the next election and to see what other reforms she can bring about. But there is a felony domestic violence charge, aggravated family offense. To meet the standard for that, you have had to have committed a qualifying offense and been convicted, and then commit another qualifying offense within 5 years. What he did to Amy qualified. Him violating my order of protection, that allowed us to charge him in Rockland County with a felony. That is the reason he served 2 years in state prison. The emails he sent to me were benign. He wasn't threatening me. He just knew he was going to get arrested for what he did to Amy and thought it'd be okay to write to me on my 40th birthday, which it wasn't. I called the police immediately, and Rockland County, they know who he is now. And at this point, the ADA is now a senior ADA, and she made the deal, and she was right. She was like, Vanessa, this deal, he's gonna offend again, we'll get him. She was right. She was right, so we got justice. He went to prison. 2 years is not enough for blinding this woman.
No. And for all the trauma, I mean...
And he's out on the streets now again.
And it could totally happen again.
Except now if you Google him, ladies, you will know better. You know, look and do your due diligence. You have the internet at your fingertips. Do your due diligence. Before that wasn't an option. And you know, Google was there. You weren't going to find anything.
This is such good advice.
Google
and find out. Right?
Follow your gut.
Yeah.
I would not listen to my gut.
Because love is blind.
Love is blind.
You can't see.
No. My son saved my life.
Yeah.
Jack saved I left for Jack.
Yeah.
I don't know if, because I was a beating away from not making it. Jack saved my life. And Jack knows, because he's asked.
Yeah.
And I said I would never lie to him. So he knows to a certain extent. He knows I was hurt. And he is, in many ways, probably way more righteous than I am. So he's not going to forget. I think I came out of this one at the end of the day a better person. I'm a more patient person. It's not a virtue I was born with. It's the truth. More measured, more empathetic. Because I think if you've never had trauma like this, you really don't understand what it does to a person.
Yeah.
But I'm strong on you've got to do the work. I have helped many victims of different crimes. I've also been taken advantage of doing that. It cost me a job. And in that moment...
Because you're so passionate about helping, right?
I am. And so, and that leaves me open for, you know, and because my story's out there, it leaves it open to manipulators and people that are looking to take advantage to do that, to prey on the one part where, like, I made a promise to myself, to God, to the universe, that if he saw us through and saw Jack and I through it, really Jack, okay, I would never forget what we have been through. I would never let anybody rob us of our peace. And I wouldn't stop paying it forward as long as I had breath in me. So even when it cost me a job I loved, and it was unjust, in a moment I was like, I'm done. I'm not helping anybody anymore. I'm just going to worry about Jack and I. And that was a lie.
Yeah.
And it was kismet. I'm now working as a senior paralegal. I am working on some dynamic cases. And I'm getting to work with family court. I'm getting to work with victims. And I'm getting to earn a living doing it. And I'm applying to law school.
That's so exciting.
It is beyond exciting.
You've taken the worst case and the worst scenario and you've literally turned it into something so amazing and such a testimony, and you're such an advocate.
Thank you.
You're living that promise. I know you told me when we met the first time that you went to church one day and literally God just came over you and you made a promise to him, right? That
I went in there. Nobody was at the church. And I hadn't been to church forever. Somebody's wedding.
Yeah.
I wasn't a practicing Catholic. I'm still not. Haven't been to church. But I needed something. I went into the local church and I lit a candle and I went to a pew and I kneeled down and I prayed and I pleaded for my son, and I'm like, I know you're not supposed to. I did go to Catholic school. I grew up going to Catholic school. I'm like, I know you're not supposed to come here, God, when you want something. But like, help me. And at that time,
such a simple prayer. Right?
I prayed for John too at that time. I was still hopeful that maybe there was some redemption, not for us, but for Jack, for his father, so he could have his father in his life. And that didn't happen. Because I wondered, after everything was done in court, I knew he was with somebody new. Maybe there was some redemption there, and Jack could be safe with him. If Jack could be safe with him, I could co-parent. I would love for my son to have that. I would love nothing more than for my son to have his father. It's not safe. And if I hadn't had the outcome, if I hadn't been in Rockland County...
But your outcome is a miracle, really.
It is the exception. And it should not be the exception. It should be the norm.
Totally.
But I had an exceptional ADA. I had an exceptional judge. I had IDV court. I had an exceptional advocate that came to every hearing with me. I had the support of family and friends. The stars aligned for us in really, really miraculous ways. But I did the work. I did the work. I realized that the family court says it's not fair, period. Life tends to not be fair. But I realized I have to give to receive in the court. And so when I speak to victims now and they tell me, and I'm like, I understand. I can't give you legal advice. I can consult with the attorneys and give advice then. But what I can tell you from my personal experience, what you're saying to me makes sense. And no, it's not fair. But here's what the judge is likely going to say. Concede on this. It's not putting you at risk. It's not putting you, concede. Even if there is a mitigated risk there might be a little bit of risk. My story is the exception. Concede. What's the long-term game here? What's the goal? You want to win the war. You want least amount of contact. You want to have the most amount of supervised time. Concede. A lot of times I see victims, they're just unwilling to. They cannot control their emotions. They're all over the place. They are how I was when I first left. You can't go into court that way and expect to win. And if the person you're going against has the resources to hire good attorneys, they will bury you. You will lose custody, period. You will lose custody. Do the work. If you don't do it for yourself, do it for your children. Do the work. Concede on the small things. Don't worry about the justice of it. The justice will come. But it's in you. And a lot of victims don't get that. And it doesn't make me any stronger, any smarter, any better. It just, I learned from my experience and I try to give that to others so you can have at least a close outcome to mine. But Jack and I, we have a great life. He is a beautiful, beautiful boy. He's my little lion cub and I'm his lioness, we say. And so he's working on being a lion.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And we've had challenges because of his autism, but...
Yeah, so let's touch lastly on that also, because we've had such an amazing conversation. And you've battled so much, but now you're also dealing with a lot of things with Jack as well. So tell us a little bit more about his condition and what that looks like.
At 6 months I knew, and everybody told me I was crazy. And I just knew, mother's instinct.
Yeah.
When he was 11 months, I left. And so now I'm trying to do everything we just talked about and put myself back together. And I'm like, my son needs help. And he turned 1 and they were telling me he was too young to be evaluated. At first I took that answer and then I said, no, I called back and I want him evaluated. And again, stroke of luck, we got a senior evaluator. She's been doing this 25 years. Technically, he didn't check all the boxes. But she's like, I'm gonna make him check the boxes. It's very clear. We can't diagnose him yet, but he needs some help. And so I immediately got him in occupational therapy, ABA therapy, and which is, I know, controversial sometimes with parents who have autistic children. It worked for us. Applied behavioral analysis therapy is what it stands for, and speech therapy. And then I started doing the research and reading, probably obsessively, both about domestic violence and autism at the same time, where it would keep me up at night. A little obsessively, probably not the healthiest to do it to that extreme, but I needed to learn and understand what was happening.
But at least it kept you busy, right? Otherwise, you can sit and feel powerless. At least researching and doing, like you say, looking into it, finding information.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power, and the more power you have, the more powerful you can feel, and then the more you can fight back, right?
And advocate.
In a good way.
Right.
Yeah.
And with Jack, you're working, when you get into the school system, you're working with a lot of PhDs and a lot of elitists. And so they're going to use big words you're not going to understand. And although I'm well educated, this is not what I do for a living. So, no, I don't understand the data sets at looking at them, but if I do the research, I can learn to understand them. Jack's biggest challenge with the autism was his communication. He was nonverbal for quite a while. I changed his diet at one point. So let me just take out the dairy and the wheat, which was very, very challenging for a 2-year-old.
Yes, I can imagine.
But I did it, and he had an explosion of language.
What?
That they called me
food change.
From food change. And listen, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to sit here and say to you that is necessary. It could have just happened. But it was almost overnight. And then he did the work. Jack does the work every day. He, in the last year or so, has realized, and now he knows he has autism, he's incredibly bright. I mean, he's doing like algebra. He reads. I call him a ferocious reader because he's my little lion, and he's a ferocious reader. He gets through books. Wow. He's studying mythology now. We were just at the library. But it's not been without its challenges and more fear. He didn't have words. Is somebody going to hurt him? I had to work. So he had to go to daycare, school. He really became conversational probably in the last 2 years. He'll be 10 this year. And he takes the bus. He's always taken the bus. And he was assaulted by his bus aide a couple of years ago. I can't say much more on it at this point, but there's no question about it. And I will say that for parents of autistic children, your fear is valid. And for the nonverbal ones, I was told that bus aid was immediately, as soon as I found out no longer his bus aid. And I was told, aren't you happy? That wasn't enough for me. Fire her. I know you have to do an investigation. I worked with state-funded programming. I know the way it works. I know you have to do your investigation, but it's on video. This person should never be around children. I was then told, or asked, aren't you satisfied that she's just not around your child? And I said, that might be enough for you, but I had a child that didn't speak at one time. I can't go to sleep at night knowing that she's doing this to other children and just be grateful that my son is okay. He's my priority. Of course, I'm glad that he's okay. But what about the other kids? And then I had a moment of fear, Lorna. Am I going to take on and really pursue this with a school district, with a specialized education program? And I sat on it. And I probably sat on it for longer than I've sat on anything. And then I spoke to a local father who happens to be an attorney, and he was like, Vanessa, but if you go forward and you speak out, and they would be, I was worried about Jack. I'm not at school, I can't protect him. They would be insane to hurt him. And it was the same strategy as court.
And that's what a lot of people are sitting with, right? Should I speak out? Should I not? Like that fear of, what if I speak out and they get further victimized? Like, what if I'm abused at home? What if I speak out and like it, gets worse? Like people sit with that fear, right? And that's what stops them from doing it.
And look, I've been re-victimized for, at work. For speaking out, losing my job because of it. I've had people roll their eyes. I'm too dramatic. I've learned I have an armor for that now. I don't care. I've had family, discuss my domestic violence and my son in horrible ways. It's no skin off my nose. I don't care, but I understand why it keeps people quiet. I also, I'm just built differently. And surviving what we did, I made that promise. I wouldn't be keeping that promise if I had just been satisfied that my son was okay. What about the other children? And another 2 cases came out recently. 2 children, their heads, nonverbal, were held underwater. It is pervasive what is happening to children who have autism or other neurodivergence disabilities, developmental disabilities throughout the country. We're not doing enough. Do the research. If your child comes home and they seem different, their behaviors are different, notice that. If they're having a meltdown for no reason and that's not common for them, something's going on they can't tell you that meltdown is telling you. When your child has words and they tell you very definitively something has happened, you'll be okay. You might get re-victimized. There are people that will judge you. There are people that want to judge your parenting. Everybody has something to say. You have to learn how to block that out and and I'm not saying it's that easy, not care, do the work, go back to therapy, and focus on your child, because your number one job as a parent is to protect them. And I want my son happy and whole. And I will burn every bridge. I will burn it all down if I have to protect him. And I don't care. I will lose sleep. I won't live in fear. I've lived in fear long enough. John did it once to me. It will first and last. And certainly my son is not going to live in fear. He had to once. The experience he went through, it would be over my dead body that he'll have to do it again. So, there's reform that's needed there. There's just so much work that needs to be done. But if people don't speak out, the legislators don't know. The heads of state don't know. You have to speak out. And even when a head of state, when a governor really wants something, Governor Hochul had to dig her heels in and say, I'm not passing this budget until we pass this discovery reform. I didn't know she could get it done. She got it done. She got it done, but she met with victims and survivors, and she met with other State Department heads, and she did her research, and she heard the stories, and she brought that back to the legislators, and she brought it to the public. So we gave her the tools. She said, I need the tools and the resources. Give them to me and I'll get it done. She did. And I'm not the only survivor she's met with. But you have to be willing to speak out. And, my focus is probably going to pivot a little bit from domestic violence. I'll always be there for it. More to working with parents and children who are developmentally disabled, because there is so much need there. And their children. And again, where are their human rights? Even if they don't have words, they're still human beings.
Vanessa, you have been amazing. You are a powerful woman, absolutely. And you are living out the promise that you've made to God. So
thank you,
you can be so proud of yourself. Lastly, looking back at your life, is there anything that you feel like you wanted to do differently and what would you say to women sitting in those abusive situations?
I don't think I would have done anything differently because everything brought me to here. I can't even regret my marriage because I have my son. So what I would have done differently probably would have been post-separation and post us being settled, a little bit more cautious about who I helped, a little bit more discerning and not so quick to want to help and allow myself to be taken advantage of. So be wary of that when you've healed, and wary of people who seem like they champion for you, but when you are healed and you are strong again, aren't genuinely happy for you. They're happier for you and they're more for you when you are beneath them than when you are doing well, even if they seemingly have more than you do. And for victims that are still suffering through this, there's help. And there are places that won't judge you. Have a plan if you can, because leaving is dangerous. Don't let that stop you. If you have trusted people you can go to them, and you'll be okay. You will come out on the other side of it. It's not easy, but you can do it. You really can do it. You can do it for you and for your children.
Where can people find you if they wanted to reach out?
Sure, they can find me on Instagram. I'm very responsive. Victims tend to find me on there a lot. And it's at Vanessa M. Petrosian.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And that is it from me, Lorna Grayling and M-powerTV. If you would like to get in touch with Vanessa, have a look on the screen right now. Her details will be on there. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our episodes. And until next week, goodbye.